Yeah, I think I want to buy PayPal, but yeah, we're at 32.49, so almost up 1% over the last week or so, which, you know, very, very, very little gross and net exposure. So the account's almost still all in cash, which when you're starting out an account, that's a reasonable thing to do. I might consider covering some MicroStrategy too, because, you know, if Bitcoin rallies, I mean, I kind of think tariffs will blow over and that, you know, we could get a new lease on life in the market for another 6 months. You guys know my famous story in 2007. I basically bet the farm that we were going to have a great financial crisis. I was wrong. We had one in 2008. So, you know, I would have been Michael Burry. And the Farmer Bro all in one. But, you know, I saw everyone on Wall Street saw the same thing Burry did and Paulson, and really it's Paulson and Falcone. Burry was distant third. There were actually some others as well. So Burry was like maybe not even top 5 people who got that trade right. Paulson was by far number 1, right? Paulson made like $40 billion or $25 billion or something. And there's a book called The Greatest Trade Ever. And then Paulson never had another good year again, basically. His next big idea was gold. Well, he was right, but he was early. He basically went all in on gold. And that was a terrible trade for 5 years. I think he sold it. But gold is obviously would have been a perfect trade now. So the point is, timing is everything. And, you know, I'm nervous that tariffs will blow over and we'll go back to the bull market. At the same token, I also think that tariffs might not blow over and that they are just a match that lights the tinder box. And the tinder is what the problem is. It's not the match. Match is just there, you know, while the planks of dry wood that we built up, deficits, inflation, you know, high valuations, you know, these kinds of things are the problem. Any structural impediment to growth, massive amounts of debt is the main one, that we basically borrowed lots of money to have a pretty low GDP growth. And now that, you know, we got to pay back that money, we can't keep borrowing, we have to get to a new normal of growth that's very low. So that's kind of what we're talking about, what we're working with. Make sure you go to 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and chat with me on there and send me DMs. And I'm about to post my phone number on there, so you could just call me. I might have an operator pick up, though. Big gainers, USA Rare Earth, USAR. A lot of people are excited about this as a tariff play. Rhythm Pharmaceuticals, one of my old friends. I always used to like this stock. I've lost touch with these guys and what's happening to them. Phase 3 trial results. Hypothalamic obesity, 20% weight loss. This is a company that makes drugs for extreme obesity due to a genetic illness. S&P fading a little bit, down 40 bips. Nowhere near the catastrophe that some people were predicting on Sunday, which once everyone's predicting catastrophe and crashes, you know it's not going to happen. Yeah, AVXL just a zero of zeros. Make sure I'm short that, yes. We'll ramp up our AVXL short as ideally this trade comes to a conclusion. I was doing some financial programming yesterday, all day. All right, let's look at some more biopharma, shall we? So to be an effective biopharma analyst, you just have to look at drugs all day long, every drug, nonstop. Like you cannot stop looking at medicines. And if you're doing that for like a big pharma, it's a lot of work. And you have to do it for a big pharma. If you don't do it for a big pharma, you're not going to understand little pharma, which is called biotech. So here's an example. Here's Roche. And it means that your models have to be thorough and complete. Every drug has to have its own page. That is not the case here. That's when I come to your house and fire you. So how do we figure out where Roche's pipeline is? Well, just start getting to work. Go to Roche.com. Can't be lazy. None of this information is in a single place. You got to go put it together. And nobody's going to do it for you unless you pay them a lot of money. So innovation, this is how they say R&D. I just want to see the pipeline, guys. Come on. Now, you could back into the pipeline by going to clinicaltrials.gov. There's a lot more thorough anyway. It's like they don't want you to know. But yeah, there's no easy way to do it other than going one by one, which is, you know, really painful. Here's Rose 7790121 for MASH. It's interesting. There's a lot of competition for MASH, and now you just Google Rose 7790121. See what happens. Oh, it's also being used for ulcerative colitis, so that's a big clue. And if there's a paper, it's even better. We can see exactly what the mechanism was. There it is. Anti-TL1A antibody. Now, I believe there's other TL1A antibodies, so now we have to go make a list of those if we really want to understand. Tumor necrosis factor like ligand 1A. They had something called the TUSCANY trial. And because this is autoimmune, we want to, this is how I feel after trying to short 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗃 and Rigetti sometimes, that I don't know if you guys can see that. That's where I'm at. But, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the master file, which I should probably rename that because it's insensitive to modern times. Then let me go to immunology. And again, keeping all of this stuff updated is a full-time job. I already have a full-time job. I don't think that job exists anymore. All right, so this is TL1A, TUSCANY 2. Oh, what's this? PF, this was a Roivant drug? What? That'll make no, oh, right. This went from Pfizer to Roivant to Roche. This is what Roche, so this is one of the funniest stories in pharma, right? Pfizer had this pile of immunology drugs, and they said, we don't want this anymore. Or Vivek, said, I'll give you $100 million for all your immunology drugs. And Pfizer said, sure. Then he goes to Roche and he sells them for $6 billion. Like 3 months later. Woo! Gotta love it. One man's trash, another man's treasure. Okay, what's this? 𝗘𝗀𝗢𝗕𝗢𝗕. A terrible thing these new BARTs are. It's an antibody, new name for an antibody. This is Merck. Merck's TL1A. Merck paid a lot of money for this company, Prometheus. And here it is for ulcerative colitis. And let's see if we can get some data here. 26% remission. Nobody in placebo. Not bad. This is for induction of remission. And we can go compare that to, say some of the other drugs that are used, like TNF alpha inhibitors. I mean, we should just know off the top of our heads what ulcerative colitis response rates are, right? I can log in here, but I don't want to jeopardize my password. If you don't know what ulcerative colitis is, it is one of the major autoimmune diseases. So here's 𝗔𝗔𝗓. I think they got 𝗔𝗔𝗓 approved. Pfizer wasted a bunch of money for this molecule. 𝗔𝗔𝗓. It's 𝗪𝗔𝗐𝗔𝗓, and it's a CYP inhibitor. Gotta add that now. Oh yeah, I should put the MS drugs up here. 𝗪𝗔𝗐𝗔𝗓, S1P1, or is it S1P? And that's for ulcerative colitis. Let's see how its response rates were. 27 versus 7 at week 12. So this is 26 versus 1, maybe a more stringent definition of remission. But I don't know, 𝗪𝗔𝗐𝗔𝗓 isn't selling very well out of the gate, but it's just getting started. Let's see how that does. And this is the old name for the Roche drug. This is what Roche paid money for. That was TUSCANY. Guselkumab. Let's see how guselkumab's doing. That's our friend Tremfya, P19 inhibitor. And what do we do here? 60. That's clinical response. I don't know if that's a remission. You have to probably read the paper to see if there was a remission rate. Oh boy, Adobe really doesn't want me to read this thing. Well, we can read it without. This is why I hate jumping on new computers. Even though they promise that the experience is the same over different PCs, it never is. All right, here's remission for guselkumab. Sort of similar, 25 to 10. They kind of all have this 25 versus 10 sort of percent, right? We've seen 3 of these now. Okay, we've seen 3 of these that all sort of have the same data. So I don't know if this is going to be that big. The TL1A doesn't seem that profound. Although we should look at the biology of TL1A and see, okay, is that something that's really interesting? This is a weird drug. It's from Abbvie, a weird French company. There's mirikizumab. Increased stool frequency, rectal bleeding, bowel urgency, abdominal pain, and fatigue. Ulcerative colitis is terrible. It's similar to Crohn's disease. I forget which one. I think Crohn's is higher in the GI tract, and UC is closer to the rectum / lower colon area, but I'm not 100% sure. Whereas Crohn's is a little higher in the GI tract, more intestinal, isn't it? Any doctors in the house? I know a lot of doctors watch us. And then there's the top quant on X, poo-poo pee-pee, or pee-pee poo-poo. Some people just call him P4. I highly recommend you follow 𝗢𝗢𝗘𝗢𝗢. He just posted a couple of trades. He made $5 million in the last few days. He's the real deal. Like I said, if you know where to look, there are people that are really actually, it's the serious, the serious thing, the real thing. Michael Bigger, my buddy, who's early employee at D.E. Shaw, worked with a guy named Jeff Bezos. There's a lot of serious people on the internet if you know where to look. If you ask nicely, you might sometimes get the answer. All right, symptomatic remission at week 12. This definition of remission must have been interesting because it's very high for both placebo and drug. Oh, well, their symptomatic remission is not the same as actual remission, right? Endoscopic or clinical remission. I believe that is different. Here's bowel urgency remission. My eyes are still... All right, here's mirikizumab. Inverse dose response here. 12% all the way up to 23% of drug versus 5% in placebo. That's phase 2. 𝗢𝗢𝗘𝗢𝗢 is I mean, look, some of these people are going to be weird and strange. He's not completely normal, but he is, I can confirm he's a real... I can't tell you anything about him. That's for him to reveal. I will say at the very least that he's the real deal. He's been there, done that. Maybe even more so than I have. All right, ulcerative colitis for 𝗻𝗡, which is mirikizumab, 12% to 23% versus 5%. Now, when you fill out these forms and you make all these tables, not only are you, storing information that you need to understand these companies in a good place, when you talk to a doctor, which you're supposed to do if you're in biopharma, when you talk to a doctor and you say, how do you feel about mirikizumab? In your head immediately, you know exactly what it is. There's no ambiguity. And the doctor will be pretty impressed because he's going to say, you're talking to me like you're a fellow immunologist. Hey, just brush that off and say, yeah. But, it's your job to be that good. You're that good, you're going to be a millionaire. And all this information is on the internet. So it's up to you as to whether or not you want to be lazy. And I know you're going to be lazy. But some of you, like 1% of you, are going to say, I'm going to learn everything there is to know about immunology drugs. And then one of you will get the job at Baker Brothers or Citadel or something like that. And then one of you will say, I remember that guy, Shkreli. And I get one of those about once a week. Somebody says, I remember 8 years ago, you said that I should try this. And I did. And now I'm the man. Okay, modified clinical remission at week 8. Was there a placebo in this bad boy? Placebo-adjusted clinical remission at week 8. There's just only so many syllables that haven't been taken. Ritlecitinib. It's not lectinib, it's lecitinib. And let's say, look at Vivek. Vivek was able to do this work, well, somebody who worked for him probably, but at his direction. And he was able to flip 100 mil to $6 billion. Think about that. And I know these companies, Pfizer's, Merck's, Lilly's, they'll sell you one of their drugs for $1 million. And you might be able to put some spit shine on it and sell it for 100. Happens every day. It's not easy. Nobody said it would be. But it is doable. You can find that diamond in the rough, and Vivek found it. That's one of the best deals I've ever seen. The best deals anybody's ever seen. Look it up. Roivant, Roche. Roivant, Pfizer. They basically took a stack of drugs from Pfizer and sold them to Roche for 100x. That's like a 100x price increase. Well, actually, I'm curious if it just ever got approved. Yeah, 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏. And obviously that goes in your Pfizer model. And I just noticed the 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏 product, and it's approved for alopecia. Go figure. Alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune disease, believe it or not. Now, brepocitinib, that's the thing. Pfizer had so many of these kinase inhibitors, they said, let me just sell them all to Vivek. We don't need all of these. We only need a couple of these, right? And it turns out that, in fact, Roche wanted them so bad, they paid $6 billion. So I don't know if Brepo ever... Oh, yeah, it became that. So that did go to Avant. And is it still Priovant? Or did Priovant go to Roche? Oh, there we go. I don't think Priovant was part of the Roche deal. Priovant was like maybe not included in the... So they bought Telavant, not Priovant. $7 billion. Stand corrected. I said 6. So this is Roivant and Pfizer owning this together. Brepo. And it looks like they're doing dermatomyositis or systemic sclerosis or one of those things. Huma, almost under $1. I love it. Some people say, oh, Shkreli, you're short. Does that mean you like it when a company fails? And I'm like, no, I don't want to see any company fail. Wrong. I do want to see Humacyte fail. Yeah, I said it. What you going to do about it? So here you have clinical remission of 9 to 20% with none for placebo. And then you have endoscopic remission, which is seemingly a less of a hurdle. So I go with the stricter hurdle. But the details matter, because if one drug has 25% remission, but if you look at the exact, definitions, then that's very different, from another drug. It's a lot more lenient, then you have to consider that. But it certainly, at first blush, it doesn't look like there's a gigantic difference here. Still, it's interesting because, it's a disease where basically there's still a lot of unmet need. I mean, if you're given a drug and only 25% of patients have remission, that's an interesting disease to target, because, well, that's 80% of the patients not getting better. Now, if you take 3 or 4 of these bad boys in a row, maybe there's a chance that you can do the math that, you will get into remission, but will you stay in remission is still another question. I love that. And NLRP3 inhibitor. Is that a real NLRP3 inhibitor or a fake one? Let's see. Oh, a Roche Selnoflast. NLRP3 is one of these holy grails, so it was very hard to drugify. Really, really tough to actually no treatment difference. So I'm very curious about that. It's the only known paper on that drug. Put that in our Roche model. So as you can see, you really have to be willing to build an encyclopedia of medicine to understand, all of the different mechanisms, all of the different, drugs, all the things people have tried. It's hard. I'm going to probably build some tools on 𝗏𝗀𝗘𝗢 to help with that, but it's still, it's about you. How much work do you want to put in? How interested in this stuff are you? To me, medicine's fascinating. To you, it might be boring. To me, I don't have IBD. I barely know. I think I know a couple people that do have Crohn's. And I know one person that has UC. I haven't talked to in a long time. But it still fascinates me that there's 100,000 people, maybe more, I think a lot more actually, that have this terrible pain from an autoimmune condition that's just vicious. And despite our best attempts, there's billions of dollars at stake here. Greedy pharma companies putting their best scientists on this can't get better than 25% remission. That's fascinating. What is going on in this disease, this autoimmune disease, that is so hard when we have other treatments that are much, look at MS, much, much better diagnosis? Why? That's fascinating to me. I think that's really interesting. And, you could make billions of dollars if you figure out why. And you could just read papers all day. You might say, I have an idea. Let's try that. It's been under our nose this whole time. Happens all the time. Where is Entyvio? Okay, so this is Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. I think this is considered one of the best drugs. This is a trial that compared it with the legendary Humira. 17% versus 7%. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. Entyvio did 17% remission versus 7% for Humira. And that was, probably a Takeda funded study, but still. Now we get a sense for TNFs, which were the first ulcerative colitis drugs, got you 7% remission. That's awfully low. 7% ain't much. And then the newer drugs kind of got you 10 or 15%. Now maybe we're headed to the 20%. Area. So this is the Ghebos score for ulcerative colitis. So Ghebos remission definition. And then there's some other definition perhaps. Histological remission. So this could be, again, a little bit more of a strict definition of remission. I don't know. Here's clinical remission. This was saying 16.5 versus 9% for placebo. So it kind of feels like maybe that was, again, placebo subtracted, still single digits. All right, so I think we have a sense for what the UC world looks like. This is another drug I've followed for a long time. It's a really old drug. This was a Roche drug. You probably could have bought this drug from Roche. It was so old. But it was lying around in really a nice medicine, 𝗕𝗀𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓. And now they finally ran their own phase 3s after seeing how much money Takeda was making in Crohn's. So here's their UC study. Like I said, UC and Crohn's are pretty similar. And they had 19% remission versus 7% for placebo. Okay, so I think I got a good sense for the ulcerative colitis landscape. And again, you might go to ulcerative colitis website. You might try to get the disease yourself just to see how this says 𝗓𝗏𝗘𝗢𝗓. Some other time, but that's a good start. S&P dropping a bit here, down 65 basis points. Our portfolio, $30,275, just under 1% positive. We sold all our HIMs. We shorted a little bit more of the quantum computing stocks, which are positively performing today, strangely. Let me see what Abbvie's earnings multiple is here. 15 times and 13 times. Abbvie might be the answer. I like Abbvie. Now, they spent a lot of money on a schizophrenia drug that's not going to pan out, but they take a lot of swings and misses. I like that management team. They're very willing to make mistakes, which many other big pharmas, they just don't do that. I always love talking to those guys because they're in it to win it. They act like they're owners, which is rare. And that's why they're the number 2 biopharma in the world. And they did it without GLP. Have they said they don't want a GLP? Let me check. Let's Google that. Abbvie GLP-1. Let's see. Okay, they looks like they did a deal. They did a small deal recently. Did we miss it? They did a tiny deal, but that means they could still do a bigger deal. Oh no, we didn't miss this. We saw this. 350 million bones. That's a lot for an upfront. Oh, right. This is the amylin drug. So that means Abbvie doesn't have a GLP-1. And it's obvious they're going to need one. If they're doing amylin's kind of a sister drug, sister target to GLP-1. So if Abbvie's doing amylin, they probably want to do GLP-1. They don't have a GLP-1 in the pipeline, so they need to buy one. So if they're going to buy one, are they going to buy Viking? Are they going to buy Structure? Could they buy something from the big pharma that doesn't want their GLP-1 anymore? Can they buy something from an Asian company? That's happening a lot more recently. Those are all sort of options. It's so funny to me that Abbvie is so big that they could buy Pfizer and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It used to be the other way around pretty dramatically. Okay, so this is Roche's Herceptin, which is one of Roche's first drugs, really one of Genentech's first drugs. This is a Bangladeshian generic, not something we're interested in. Von Willebrand type 3, you gotta check every one of these drugs in the pipeline. Why is Roche doing a Von Willebrand type 3 observation cohort? There's no drug in here. They're not doing it for their health. They must have a drug. Von Willebrand type 3. Von Willebrand disease is a bleeding disorder. It's kind of like hemophilia, a little less severe, I think. Okay, well, what about this one? RO7673396. I think I've gotten into some fights with this guy. I always thought of him as a younger dude, too. Doesn't look like he's very young. 27 years of experience. Okay, so you got a KRAS inhibitor here, which was obvious from the clinicaltrials.gov. But it, may not be a KRAS inhibitor technically. You never know what you could find on the internet. Sometimes a molecular structure will be leaked. Sometimes you could find them in patents and things like that. You never know. But for now, we don't know what this drug does, technically. Looks like it could be a KRAS inhibitor or a RAS inhibitor. But let's put it down on our list. And you can see just how many drugs these big pharma companies have. This is a PET imaging study of a drug I don't know called 𝗨𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And it makes me wonder if that's a cannabinoid drug. There are other drugs that have that, cannabinoid drugs that have that name. So let's see. 𝗨𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. They terminated it, and it was a TAR agonist, not a cannabinoid. Now, you'd have to go to your psychiatry. It's like Seprecor, which is Daiichi Sankyo, is doing a similar clinical trial. TAR is a trace amine associated receptor. It's been drugged before. It's been tried to be drugged before. It's not been very fruitful. So maybe Daiichi has something, but maybe they don't. When they do, bigger phase 3s that may see nothing. But schizophrenia is still one of the largest unmet medical needs, by far. So yeah, let's not be lazy. Let's go to our psychiatry, which apparently have not updated in years. We've got schizophrenia. Well, there's a lot of psychiatric diseases. I've listed them all here. There's probably more than this. And let's see, in schizophrenia, I had TAR down here as a mechanism. But let's see if I had a medicines and investigational. I guess I'd put this in investigational, even though there's a sort of a failure. And it was RO. Roche is weird. They have two code names. So that was not confusing enough. RO7906, or it was RG7906, and then RO6889450. And this ended up being named 𝗷𝗩𝗘𝗏𝗏. Schizophrenia, and it was a TAR inhibitor or TAR agonist. Let's see. Somebody tried it. Oh, there's the TAR agonist. So this must have been a TAR agonist too. It's in active development, but I could be wrong. So they saw a big benefit there, but I don't think they're going to see it again. And it was a partial agonist. So agonists are very different from antagonists. Agonists are a little more special. Hard to make an agonist compared to antagonists. Antagonists are a little easier. Agonist means you're activating the receptor. That's a little tricky. They did this study. It's over. So I would say it's not being actively developed for now. But I don't know. And now you see the same drug that we looked at earlier, 0121 for MASH. There is a study here that they're doing for atopic dermatitis, which is also known as eczema. So that's interesting. I want to make sure we don't have 7906 in Roche model. Let's see. I also want to have like a master section here in addition to psychiatry. So one of the problems with doing this is you have a lot of data overlap, and an ontology could be quite helpful. Who does ontologies? If there was only a software company that could help me these ontologies, I'd be so happy. But they would have to work with Excel. So I'm showing you kind of what it would be like if you were going to be a biopharma analyst nonstop, which I don't have the time. I wish I did. There's a couple people who want to work full time to help me do that just for you guys. I think that could be a good idea. I'm considering it. It's funny, La Roche-sur-Yon in France is a city, so it's going to come up every time I look for Roche. And then I have to look up Genentech too, because Genentech is sort of a part of Roche, but they might file their own clinical trials. So this whole thing is a mess. It's going to take forever. There's 0121 again. I mean, they did buy this thing for $7 billion, so I mean, it's not surprising that they're doing some clinical trials. That's a lot of clinical trials, doing everything. Oh my God, what's that? Market's closed. That's my 𝗙𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗦𝗢.